What is up? It's the Fit Gear Hunter, and today we have the full and final review for the Garmin Epix, the Generation 2, some have pointed out. This is an awesome watch. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. I've got the Garmin Instinct 2 on the way, which is a full tilt offering over the last one, and a lot of other reviews still yet to come. So what are we gonna do today? I wanted to say out of the gate that I have done a lot of sort of subset reviews and an initial comprehensive review of the new offering pieces on the Fenix 7 and the Epix versus the Fenix series of watches. So I'm going to put those all in the description below, as well as there's going to be timestamps in the description below, because I'm not going to go over the laundry list of things that are, you know, new to the Epix and Fenix 7 and were originally offered in the Fenix 6. We're just going to primarily focus on the Epix and the overall experience. I am going to touch on three main areas: the watch experience, just like as a smartwatch, the wellness, sleep, and recovery experience, and the training experience. And I'm going to spend a lot of time really comparing this to a lot of primary offerings that are out there. A lot of this information is going to be similar to what I posted and presented in the Fenix 7 full review, because we're going to compare it to Coros, Suunto, Polar, and the Apple Watch in the full lineup in each of those areas: the watch, in the wellness, in the training aspects. What is missing from some of those lineups that makes this so attractive? The thing that's different about this versus the Fenix 7 is it has an AMOLED screen. The screen is 100 times brighter. It is much more brilliant and functionally a million times more enjoyable of an experience to me in day-to-day life, and does not take away in direct sunlight visibility, in my opinion. The primary purpose of this review is for people looking to track their CrossFit and high-intensity interval training, or the primary focus of this channel is CrossFit and high-intensity interval training tracking devices. I'm also going to touch on some of the other benefits, but you know, if you are a always outdoor bound, hiking for 20 hours or running for 20 hours or biking for 20 hours, and some of these features might not hit as much with you, but we're still going to dive into them, and we're still going to compare all the features of the Epix to those primary manufacturers: Coros, Polar, Suunto, and the Apple Watch. Looking at it in the specs: 47 millimeters wide, 15.6 millimeters thick, and this is the more expensive version, the titanium version, which is 71 grams in weight. It has a 1.3-inch AMOLED screen, which is different than the Transflective memory and pixel, because it is a full brilliant screen, much like the Apple Watch. The brightness is up to like 600 lumens versus the highest brightness on one of the Transflectives at like 85 lumens, so you can compare it there. And it has the new Elevate 4.0 heart rate sensor, which is now on the Fenix 7 and was previously released on the Venue 2 and the 945 LTE. So we're going to look at all those categories. We're going to look at the watch, we're going to look at, and then we're going to talk about how it compares to some of our primary offerings out there. We're going to look at the wellness aspects, talk about how it compares to other primary offerings out there, and then we're going to look at the training aspects and talk about how it compares to primary offerings out there, and then we're going to answer the simple question: what should you do between this and the Fenix 7? I'm going to give you a full answer in the summary at the end of the video, so let's dive in. All right, so here is the Garmin Epix, and like I said, same basic screen. Again, in the description below, you can find a lot of summary information. See, that's the difference in the always on. You can also face plant, and it'll force it to always on, or it should. But this is the AMOLED screen. If you wanted to compare it to a Transflective screen, this is how the differences would look. If you're going through the basic menus on a very, very bright, this is the max brightness. It is at least 2 or maybe 3 times brighter than most of the other Transflectives offered by Polar and Suunto and Coros. But this is how the experience looks. This is visually how much richer the colors are. This is a very good Transflective screen. It's not as washed out, not as, you know, it's as good colorization for a Transflective, but you can see it looks kind of grayed out compared to the rich blacks of an AMOLED screen. So that is how it comes out on the Epix versus a Transflective, so that you can see the primary differences. So, you know, the obvious thing is, how does it affect battery life? I am getting, you know, 6 days of battery life with this always on display, so I can look down and sort of glance and see what it says, and then I can touch it if I want. If you use a wrist gesture to bring it to full brightness, that's where you get 6 days. And if you actually turn off the wrist gesture to where you just look down, and if you want to see full brightness, you touch it, I'm getting an extra day. So 7 days. If you turn it to off and wrist gesture only to make it illuminate, then you'll get 16 days, which is just off the charts compared to most of the Transflectives that have that dulled out screen, and even Transflectives that are not nearly as bright. So, the touchscreen, basically Garmin has everything based on their widgets. You can change, there's like 30 or 40 widgets. You can download third-party widgets and have different bits of information. You can have, some of them will actually tie to another piece of equipment that has its own widget, and it ties into that information there. But you can change all this. You can customize, you can reorder it, you can do all sorts of things. And now within the app, you can actually change it all in the app without having to use it on a little tiny watch to make the adjustments and change the settings. But the widget is, again, compared to Coros and Polar and Suunto that have a limited number of widgets, less customization. Here you just have a laundry list, and it's well beyond, the list that comes even built in, which is like 30 widgets big. You can see all sorts of stats, your steps, your stair count, a summary of stats. So that is how it mainly works there. The top button will give you the control button. Again, another form of customization. Again, the touch screen is fantastic, or you can just go by the buttons themselves. But you can add, there's probably 30 or 35 different control metrics you could add to this. Where's my phone? I use that all the time. It's really great. But you can just change all sorts of things built into the control center. And then to access the settings, here again, you have all these settings now built into the Garmin Connect app, which is fantastic. But you can change all sorts. You can dive in and change all sorts of detailed things. DC Rainmaker has a good deep dive on all of these things. To access your workouts, it's up there, and the back button is right down here. So that's the summary of the watch. That's the overview of the big pretty screen. I am getting great battery life, and let's talk about it versus some of the other vendors out there. And there you see it. There you see the big, beautiful display, a little snapshot of the Fenix 7 alongside it, so you can see what it compares to a Transflective experience. All the other major watches, Polar, Coros, and Suunto, that is a primary difference when it comes to daily watch experience. They are all Transflective. Polar does have the Unite or Ignite, which has like an LED screen, which is brilliant or bright, but it does not compare at any level. It can't have always on, can't have dimness of display. It's just sort of on or off, and it doesn't compare to the full feature set of all their other watch offerings. So if you're looking at the primary full comprehensive watch offerings, you're only going to get Transflective, which is a much dimmed down version. When you compare it to what it just offers as a watch relative to those, you get full music on the Epix, full downloadable playlists. You cannot get downloadable Spotify, Deezer, Amazon playlists on any other watch out there other than the Apple Watch, but Polar, Suunto, and Coros don't offer that at all. Full mapping, you don't get that on any other watch. Coros will on the Vertix 2, and I think they ported some down maybe to the Apex Pro is the Vertix original. You can get a picture snapshot, but it's not routing driven. So you can't route to something on the map. It's just a snapshot with an overlay of where you are GPS location. So it's just sort of like a picture version. It's not a full map. You get full customization and control. You can dive into widgets off the touch screen. You can turn the touch screen off and turn it on. So Coros has touchscreen capabilities with some of their functionality, but it's, obviously it's not controllable. You use it in the ways that it's allowed to be used, and it's not available in all ways. This is a full tilt control from nothing to everything. You can do everything on the touch screen. It's not on the other watches. You have third-party apps. Correction, Polar does have a touchscreen as well, so you can have touchscreen there. Correction there, but full customization and control. So you can move the widgets, you can move the data fields, you can move the control center, you can add things, you can take away, you can do whatever you want. And then on top of it all, you have third-party developers. So you can get watch faces, widgets, and apps from third parties. So you can have a laundry list of different watch faces out there that have different focuses and different features and different, sports-related apps you can download to the watch to use to your liking. When it comes to battery life, the typical Polar watch is like 5 to 7 days of battery life. Suunto watch, 5 to 7 days of battery life, unless you're looking at the Suunto 7, which is not a great watch because it's got a bad heart rate sensor and you can't connect it to a chest strap. So looking at the primary offerings, you have all of those things, but they are maybe 5% of the brightness. And with this watch, I am getting definitely 6 days with always on. It has targeted 16 days with the display off with just wrist gesture only. And if you turn off the wrist gesture while keeping it always on, so again, it keeps a dim always on screen so you can see it all the time, and then you have to touch it to be able to activate the screen, then I'm getting 7 days. So 6 to 7 days, which compares with a dim experience on all of the Transflective watches that I just mentioned other than Coros. Now, Coros has a long battery life, but it's got one of the dimmest Transflective displays, and you have no control over backlight there, but you do have 30 days, so that would compete more on the Fenix 7 if that was super important to you, but you also could tolerate and stomach a really dim Transflective version that's not nearly as good as the Fenix 7. Now, how does it compare to the Apple Watch? Now, the Apple Watch, you have to basically compile data from 10 different apps to be able to use on the Apple Watch. So there is no comparison. If you want a simple all-in-one place that functions excellently, then you have to look away from the Apple Watch, because to get quality data and usefulness out of the watch from a training and wellness and all these different things, you have to use multiple different apps. It only has a 24-hour battery life, so there's no comparison on battery life. This is 6 to 7 days with always on display. With Apple, it's 24 hours. But there's also no comparison on the smartwatch capabilities. If you have an Apple Watch, it's a computer, it's got one brain with your iPhone, so no comparison there, but that is just purely smartwatch focused versus a training watch that has the beauty of the Apple Watch and has the rigor of a training watch and all the details of a training watch. So with that, let's dive into some wellness aspects and then talk about how this compares to the others. Okay, so what are the things that we would see when it comes to wellness in the watch, or just what is the Garmin offering for wellness? To me, one of the most valuable aspects is body battery. So it's basically measuring your regeneration while you slept and your decline throughout the day. This is based on your heart rate variability taken 24/7. So the heart rate variability is a measure of stress that your body is under. And when you're asleep, it's a measure of the lack of stress and therefore the recovery of your rejuvenation of your system, like a battery itself. So you can see the impact, and you can go one screen down. You can see where you were at in different stress points throughout the last 4 hours, or you can just see the overall mountain since midnight. On the app, you can see a lot more details of your stress throughout the day, not just the last 4 hours. But again, stress wears the body down. Stress depletes the body battery, and stress depletes your body overall. So not just looking at workouts, this is the only watch that does this. This is the only offering that does this. Nobody else has 24/7 and like second to second or minute to minute heart rate variability tracking to be able to see what impact the day is having on your body. There are watches that track it at night, and you can pull information, and during the night it is a highly useful physiological metric. The heart rate variability through your night sleep. And some watches use that for their nightly evaluation, but this tracks it throughout the day, so you can see if you had a really high stressful day and it had a negative impact, how to prepare for your next workout. The other obvious thing is, like we just mentioned, is sleep. And sleep, it does a great job, because even in this one widget, you can see all the details as well as your sleep score. The score is based on 8 physiological aspects, which you can dive into in the app to be able to see what those 8 physiological aspects are, and you can see that all in the some of the linked just videos down below. We're not going to get into it now. You can see your overall flow of your sleep, your deep sleep, just in picture format, and then you can see the components based in time format, like how much time you spent in each zone. But the biggest thing is this. Sometimes it'll actually have like a breakout blurb that you didn't get very good sleep, or you went to bed too late, or your quality, your sleep continuity was not good. But this is a fantastic sleep summary relative to some of the others that are out there. And the other thing that you have available to you is the health snapshot. And I don't have it on this one, so you can see it on the Garmin, on the Fenix. The health snapshot basically is a 2-minute check. It'll check 5 physiological areas. It'll check your resting heart rate, it'll check your respiration rate, heart rate variability, pulse ox, and then like one other. It takes 2 minutes, and you could do this every morning when you wake up and just get a snapshot in time once a day at the same time of day, to be able to track your conditions, your overall health, and it gives you a summary. I think you can download that sort of thing. So that's another, and you know, I don't personally use it. That's why it's not on the watch that I've been wearing the most, but it's another way that you can evaluate your health. Plus you can connect to MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal could be its own widget. You know, lots and lots of great components there for wellness and overall health. So how does this compare to the others? Obviously the Epix has all the same guts as the Fenix 7, so it's straight across the board. All the same features are on the Fenix 7 as they are on the Epix. How does it compare to the Coros, Polar, and Suunto? Now with Coros, it has, the Epix has 24/7 heart rate variability tracking through their body battery algorithm, and it is 100% useful. Coros, only on the Vertex 2, has a snapshot where you just have to do a 2-minute or 60-second test, and you track it, and it gives you 1 point in time. And that does not have nearly as much value as something that's automatically tracking it 24/7 and telling you directionable information from it. When it comes to sleep tracking, Coros' sleep tracking, in my opinion, is terrible. At least how they set it up visually, it's terrible. Versus the, you know, here you have a sleep score, you can dive into all the details, you can see all your information at all times. Plus, Coros doesn't activate pulse ox for during your sleep, so lots of missing components there. How does it compare to Suunto? Now, Suunto has sleep tracking, but is not nearly in depth as far as the detail you can see, as far as your stages of sleep. It tells you like 2 stages, and it gives you a percentage score, but it's not nearly based on all the components, and it just has not nearly as much depth. It does have heart rate variability tracking and what they call resources, which is similar as the body battery here, but I have found it to not be as reliable in my testing of Suunto versus Garmin, just period. And then when it comes to Polar, Polar has great sleep analysis called Nightly Recharge, where they take a bunch of different components into effect, into, you know, assessment of your nightly recharge. And I feel like that is a great sleep. So I would feel like that compares somewhat head to head with the sleep and sleep score of the Garmin system, but they have no heart rate variability tracking all day long. So basically you have a nightly recharge snapshot and the rest of your day is not a consideration. So this will track it all the time so you can see how your day also impacts your wellness and recovery. Plus, the things you can do with Garmin, you can add MyFitnessPal, you can track all your calories on MyFitnessPal. It flows over to the Garmin app. You can see what your calorie deficit is for the day, how many calories you have left. You can tie in a weight scale to the Garmin system and track your body metrics as they change over time if losing weight is an important thing. So many more features. Again, customizable, so much more expansiveness over all those other 3 offerings. Now, how does it compare to the Apple Watch? The Apple Watch has the capability to take all these data, but they only do it in snapshot form, and it's not something you can control. So there's all these third-party apps that will use the information the Apple Watch is gathering, but it's dependent on when the Apple Watch takes information. So if you can't turn on the Apple Watch 24/7 heart rate variability. It is sort of checking it periodically, like every hour and a half or every 2.5 hours, taking a snapshot of heart rate variability, but it's not doing it all the time. So when you pull an app to see what the sleep analysis is, and you want to look at heart rate variability as a function of recovery, which the Athletic app will do, it's only taking like 5 snapshots throughout the night because it's dependent on whatever the Apple Watch chose to take, and so it's not 24/7. Plus, you don't get the 24/7 capabilities of heart rate variability tracking, which is the primary component for recovery and overall recovery from rigorous workouts or overall sickness and wellness. So other third-party apps, you can see sleep analytics. So the auto sleep is my favorite from what I've used in the past. But again, you're looking to a bunch of places. All the information is not quite available on the Apple Watch. You have to look at the app itself to get a little bit more deep dive into information. And here on the watch, you can see all the primary sleep information and sleep analytics that you probably could see. You could dive in more on the app, but it gives you a much more comprehensive amount of information on the watch, and then you also have it on the app. Pulse ox is going to be similar, but their pulse ox snapshots are not as frequent as the Garmin snapshots. So again, all in one place with Garmin, and then 100 times more data points with Garmin and throughout the entire day, not just having to use a third party to pull information from what the Apple chose to take a snapshot of at random periodic times. So let's dive into training, and then we'll talk. And last, we're going to look at what you can see when it comes to the working out, after the workout, and training load over time. So in the workout itself, so I have built a custom CrossFit. I basically copied the cardio, and I have a couple of videos you could watch about how to build your own CrossFit workout. And I basically put in the data fields that I want. You can change all these data fields here in the watch. You can change it on the app, which is a much easier experience. But see here, you can see your aerobic and anaerobic impact over time. The touchscreen is disabled, so that's why it didn't brighten back up. So you can see if the volume of work so far in the workout, mid-workout, is affecting the aerobic or the anaerobic side of your fitness, and if you're hitting your load level that you want. Here I just have also a round counter, so it's like how many laps you push the bottom button, it counts like a lap, but it also could be, it's the same thing as saying counting a round. And you could see your current round time and your last round time to see if you're falling significantly off pace in your overall timer. And you can see all sorts of other information. This is just like if you just want to see your, I pushed the wrong button, that's why it's not working. If you want to see your overall heart rate, you just get a big old heart rate thing. If you're tracking your zones, it'll show you what zone you're in around. So lots of useful information there. And then once you get done with the workout, you can just see the stats of the workout. They automatically appear at the end, and they're going to be a little bit more comprehensive than what we're going to see here. But let's look at the CrossFit from today. So you can see your heart rate graph across time. That is awesome. I mean, it's really visually very clear and pretty. And then you can see your heart rate zones, like how much time you spent in each zone if you're doing zone training. And it gives you good information of how much you pushed your heart in the 90 to 100% of max heart rate. And then you see your training effect. This was a tempo workout. It tells you specifically what type of workout that was and how it had an effect on you. It tells you specifically what the aerobic impact was on you physiologically and the anaerobic impact, and then your overall load score. So this is just like the overall like raw physical impact, but then specifics with it. And then, so that's what you see after a workout, and that's the type of stats it's taking into account. So it's taking into account, you can see your zones, you can see the training effect, the aerobic impact, anaerobic, and their overall load on your body. And all of that flows into your training load tracking. So here it's saying unproductive, because the way you keep the training status activated is you have to at least do 2 5-minute runs with GPS on using the run profile. And then you'll have a training status coupled with all that training information. All the training information is still going to be there. You can still see your load over time. It just won't give you a direction until it has a recorded VO2 max. Well, all my recent runs, my 5-minute runs, are after a hard workout. And so my VO2 max is lower than normal. And it's just because I'm running on tired legs and tired lungs. But that's why it says unproductive. Hey, whatever you've been doing has not been working because your VO2 max went down. But it also tells you the load focus, which is a culmination of how much you're doing in highly aerobic work, anaerobic work, and lowly aerobic work. And it gives you recommendations for what to keep within those ranges in the app. You can see your load over time, so like what workouts you did. It has color based on what type of load you put on your body. And you can see your load, my load's going up, 587, so the arrow is up. And then you can see here's the balance. So the top is anaerobic, the low or highly aerobic, and the lowly aerobic. And it looks like I'm in balance because I'm in all of the zones. And then here's the recovery time. Recovery time is fantastic on the Garmin watch because it takes into account not just the exertion level of your last workout. Now, if you did Murph or if you did like a barn burner workout, it's going to say a long recovery time. It's like it's gotten up to like 3 days for me at different points based on how absolutely burned out I was, that it just physiologically knew. And but workout to workout, this is how long you should wait until you do the next really rigorous workout based on how hard the last rigorous workout was. So some watches give some version of recovery time. We'll talk about that in a second. But what Garmin does is take into account the quality of your last night's sleep and the amount of stress you've been under throughout the day through the heart rate variability track 24/7. And it says, you know, here's your summary of recovery. It's primarily driven by the level of exertion from the last workout, but if you had a bad night's sleep and then you had a stressful day, it's going to actually increase this number and say, hey, you actually got to take more time off before you go hit it hard again. And if you have a really restful day, got a really long night's sleep, it's going to speed it up and shorten the time because of those good aspects. So Garmin is the only one that does that. So there's the training status, recovery time, what you see in the workout, what you see after the workout, and that is the summary of all the training aspects that are primarily seen on the watch or driven from the Garmin metrics. Okay, so training, Fenix 7 replica. Again, all the same training, unless you're going out on a 75-hour run or 75-hour bike. The battery life is the only component that will affect or limit your training on the Epix versus the Fenix 7. So, all the same there. How does it compare to Coros, Polar, and Suunto? Coros, they have good training load tracking in their what they call Evo Lab. But hear this, if you're a CrossFitter, you have to run 300 minutes over 42 days. It's steady state running, no intervals, 300 minutes before any of it is accessible. Now this might have changed. I don't know if they're gonna change that because I've always thought that is crazy. But you cannot get any training load features unless you run 300 minutes, and do the math and think about that, over 42 days. That is a ton of running to be able to activate training on your CrossFit experience. Not worthwhile. It is great and it is comprehensive in their training load evaluation. I would say it's on par with what Garmin's doing, but you even get aerobic versus anaerobic training effect, which Garmin offers. But there's no load specific, so you can't look at the load impact by type, whether it's highly aerobic, lowly aerobic, or anaerobic. You can see some of that workout to workout, but on the training load itself, no. Now, when you get to Polar, Polar does one thing really well. You can see your full training load history across all time, and it's easy to zoom back and forth. It's a pretty experience. But with Polar, everything is very simplified. You don't get a lot of detail and not a lot of deep dive into specifics. When it comes to workout exertion tracking, they just give you one score. It's your training load score. I think it's related to TRIMP, which is a physiological metric, but you don't get aerobic and anaerobic effect on your body physiologically from that workout that Garmin gives you. And you also, so Garmin will give you aerobic, anaerobic training effect, a load score, and then a load type based on highly aerobic, low aerobic, and anaerobic. None of that stuff comes with Polar, and with Polar you don't get any recovery time. They don't have a recovery time from one hard workout to the next. They don't give you any of that information. And then with Suunto, Suunto has two different parts. So they have Training Peaks, which evaluates the training load over time, and that is a plus. The Training Peaks training load tracking over time is a worthwhile metric. It is from one score, your training stress score from the workout, but it is done in what I believe from a third party that is doing a good job with algorithm writing. And then there's some parts of their training that are their own algorithm. They shifted away from First Peak and they're writing their own algorithm for recovery time. And I think they have training effect evaluations, but it's all their own algorithm, and I have found the values to not be worthwhile. The recovery time is typically half of what it should be or what it is on multiple other watches. So again, training load good, specificity bad, recovery time not trustworthy. The Apple Watch. Apple Watch, you can use third-party apps to get training load. So you can replicate all the Suunto quality training load tracking through the Sports Tracker app, and it'll give you all the same screens. It's a picture of what your Suunto app would look like. So it's all the same there. So that's good on the training load, but none of these different components, so Athletic is the other, none of them provide recovery time. Athletic will give you an evaluation workout to workout of how much aerobic and anaerobic impact you had from that, but it's not as much of an advanced algorithm design. It's written, by people just sort of starting to build the app versus First Beat that's doing very specific algorithm writing and tracking for multiple athletes for a long period of time for the aerobic and anaerobic effect. Plus, you don't get any load detail, load evaluation, and you can't as much dive into the load data, even with some of these compiling of third-party apps. So with that, we've touched on the watch, we've touched on the wellness, and we've touched on the training. So let's talk in summary about some of the big questions of how the Epix stacks up for some of these competitors, as well as whether you should consider the Epix if you're trying to decide between the Fenix 7 and the Epix. Okay, so the Fenix 7 versus the Epix. Should you choose the Epix over the Fenix 7? Immediately, yes. So if price is not a factor, there is no way, in my opinion, if you're doing CrossFit and you're not out on 2-day treks where you're using GPS for an expedition, you're not, if you hate charging your watch, maybe. But if you don't fall in that category of multi-day expeditions where you're keeping the GPS on and tracking it, 500-mile rides where you're just, if you're not in those categories, and if you don't hate charging your watch with the deepest passion ever, you absolutely should choose the Epix. The screen quality is it's completely different than a Transflective memory and pixel screen. The AMOLED screen is brilliant and beautiful. Everything comes through more legible and clear and easy to read. All the experiences are bright and brilliant. Everything in the overall usage experience is better on the AMOLED, in my opinion. Now, what about those that are still wondering about some of the older generation watches and price is a factor? Here's where it gets a little gray, and I'm actually going to answer this question. If you're in like the $400 to $500 cap range, I honestly think you should, and this is going to sound crazy, you should get a Fenix 6 and Fenix 6 Pro so you have music capabilities and Wi-Fi, and you should get a chest strap or armband to track your heart rate. As long as you are tracking your heart rate from somewhere other than the optical sensor on the Fenix 6, you are good to go with all the primary training metrics you could possibly need for a CrossFit training lifestyle with recovery, wellness, and training impact. So the Fenix 6 has such a depth in what it was offering. I've been using the Fenix 6 up until I got these watches like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And absolutely feel like my experience has been very similar. So other than the screen usage, the screen is just so much better on the Epix. It's fantastic in my opinion, but it is hugely expensive. And I am super aware of that. I mean, it has been difficult to acquire these because I had to pay for these out of my own money. It's a painful experience. So I would say if you're really just looking at core raw training, Fenix 6 plus a chest strap. If you were going to look at Fenix, if you hate chest straps, you hate armbands, you will not wear another device, then you have to look at the Fenix 7 if price is still a factor. You could look at the Fenix 7 base model, which just means you can only pick a couple of maps and you don't have multi-satellite GPS, and it'll still accomplish all the training features that you could want, but it has a much better heart rate sensor. So there's the answer. Should you pick the Fenix 7 or the Epix, and what about some of the others that Garmin offers? Now, what about all of the others, Polar, Suunto, and Coros? The answer is the same. If you can't, it's all about price. If you cannot afford the Epix, if you can afford the Epix, there is no comparison. There's no comparison to Coros, Polar, and Suunto. There's just, I mean, it's like all the better features with a bajillion times more brilliant screen, and when you look at Polar and Suunto, about the same battery life if you leave it always on all the time, and if you just do wrist rate gesture, probably 2 to 2.5 times the battery life. So there's just no comparison. If cost is a factor, I still wouldn't say bump down to one of those watches. All of the watches in their heart rate accuracy, Coros is the worst at heart rate accuracy if you're wearing it on the wrist and doing a CrossFit workout. Suunto is the second worst, and Polar is the third worst, and none of them are really trustworthy metrics if you want to have a good training experience. So again, if cost's an issue, get a Fenix 6 and an armband or a chest strap, and you will still have all the data rich, all the customization, all the third-party apps, all the things you could need. Maybe not as many as the Fenix 7 and the Epix, but you'll still have a lot of great information there. So after testing the Fenix 7 and the Epix, I love the screen of the Epix. But if I'm looking at the price and sensitive to that from all the viewers, I have to say it's a big jump in price. And if you're looking at core training features, I did feel like I was getting all the same benefit from a Fenix 6 with a chest strap or an armband. So I want to make that abundantly clear because I'm not out to oversell the Epix, even though it is a really awesome watch. And then how does it compare to the Apple Watch? If you do CrossFit and you value training metrics and you value a training experience, do not look at the Apple Watch. You can hobble together, I would say like 80% of the information or 75% of the information to get some sort of training regimen and recovery and sleep regimen. But you're tying it all together. It's a 24-hour battery life. If you forget to charge your watch, you can't sleep with it. Therefore, you can't get your recovery information there. You're tethered to the battery, and it doesn't have nearly the same depth, and it's not all in one place. You're jumping over a bunch of apps, and you can get it all in one place. You can see it on the watch, and that is accomplishable through the Fenix 6 with a chest strap. Let me say that again. So that is it. That is the summary for the Epix, and yeah, that's it. So if you have any questions, put them in this, comment down below. And it's the Figure Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.